Welcome back to Beyond the Margins, Inside the Minds Shaping Modern Finance. Today's episode is for anyone who's ever looked at a PL and thought, that looks fine, so why does the business feel like chaos? My guest today lives right at the intersection of finance, operations, and reality. George Staruch is a partner of Profitability Partners, where he helps businesses understand what's actually driving or quietly draining their profitability. He's worked across multiple industries, from service businesses to veterinary clinics, and he's also using AI in some very practical, non-buzzword ways to appraise and benchmark companies. George, welcome to the show.
Thanks. Great to be here.
Absolutely. Glad to have you. So you've worked across various industries, from plumbing to professional services, veterinary clinics, which tells me you're not afraid of complexity. What originally pulled you into the world of business operations and profitability?
Originally, I had a fairly nasty authority issue as a kid. And so my figuring was either I needed to figure out how to run one of these things or I needed to figure out a new way to eat. So it was a fairly strong driver to get started.
There you go. I love it. So some of the things that I've noticed about what you do is that no matter what industry, you seem to apply a very structured way of thinking about business. And for our listeners who are just getting to know Profitability Partners, how do you explain what you do in simple terms?
Sure. So at almost any size and in almost any industry, realistically, there is still something of an underlying math problem that all businesses are essentially just trying to complete. Like in a nutshell, one way or another, your business is, can I find something that people want? Can I get it? And can I get it to those people for less than they are willing to pay for it? Can it cost me less to provide the thing than they will give me for it? And if you can say yes to all three of those, you have a business. Now, the difference between those two numbers is how good of a business it is. But the gist of it being that, like, one way or another, those are your three main components to it. A lot of what we wind up doing with people is breaking that down into a series of sub goals to confirm that, like, all right, how much are you spending on the provision of this product? Where is that cost being allocated? How much of the allocation is actually necessary? Like, what are all the dollars? Where are the dollars going? Do they actually contribute directly to the revenue line? And then from the revenue side, where are your customers coming from? What are they costing you? Can you subdivide them further and drive down the cost to acquire them? Are they willing to pay more for a thing? And within every single industry, there is some version of that modeling that plays into effect. Once you have that underlying equation, everything else is simply different weighting across industries. So where is their power in the supply chain? Which numbers can you control or influence? Which numbers can you not? But one way or another, it all starts coming down to a series of math problems based around that. And I think that a lot of running a business, at least from the perspectives that we've seen so far, isn't necessarily overly complicated. It's just there's a lot of very tedious things that no one actually wants to do, that if you do them, answer a lot of questions.
You've mentioned before that structure is the thing most businesses are missing, not effort, not ambition, but actual structure in their business. How do you build a framework that works across industries as different as plumbing and veterinary clinics? And what tends to stay consistent no matter what business it is?
Sure. So that's gonna harken directly back to that math problem I was just describing. But the gist of it then becomes, so like for that model, if we were to step into like a plumbing company or something. So I have a new plumbing company I've spun up within the last 2 years. We're growing. We started like 500,000 year one, on track for 1.3 or 2, and ideally we'll get you from there. It's growing at a fairly healthy rate. But for each of them, what we basically do is we take what are your supply side equations? So how much does each job cost? How long should each job take? What affects how much those things cost, and what affects the amount of time we take? And from those, what are the various risks that we can control for? And you start breaking it down into a series of just, here's the quantified list of the types of jobs that we do. Here is the average amount of time that each of those jobs takes. Here are the variables that seem to affect that. Therefore, I can start algorithmizing the pricing model based off of that. Here's what I know the costs are for each one. And then here are the different neighborhoods that exist in the region that we serve. Here's the construction age for each one. Here's the type of pipes for each one. Here's their average propensity to spend based on the income of the person in that area and the probability of risk based off of the age of the house. And we can basically combine those two to start building a fairly robust model to figure out where do we target marketing so that we spend as little as possible on it, what messaging works in each area, which referral partner structures make the most sense and get the highest ROI and penetration in there. And then for each of those jobs, how many people need to be on site? What do we need to have ordered ahead of time? Does it make more sense to have a surplus of inventory for this or have to run out in the middle of it? What's the probability you're going to have to run out if you cut this inventory amount down a bit? And we do a bunch of these, and like, I'm guessing I've already lost like 2/3 of people listening just talking through it. And that's kind of the point. It's not that it's more effort or less effort. Like most of the guys that run these companies, they're very good at what they do. They're extremely good plumbers and they like plumbing. No one likes doing what I just described. Like this is extremely pedantic and annoying. However, by doing that, I can tell you exactly where the plumbing company needs to be focused at each point in time, what's going right, what's going wrong, who can be cut, who should be hired. And like, again, when you go through all the pedantic steps that it takes to build out this robust KPI framework, there's not a lot of risk to the business anymore. It's not like there's not a lot of unknowns to it. It works the way that the paper says it should work because you've quantified almost everything. It's just an absolute pain to do that, and no one wants to do it.
So then is that what you would say the fractional CFO services are that your business provides?
So I would say it's very much almost exactly that sort of thing.
Summary of that.
I think people just in general don't understand what a CFO is beyond being fun police, which is accurate. If you're spending money on things you don't need to be spending money on, we will let you know. But also like there's a difference between an accountant and a CFO. An accountant does your taxes and puts the numbers where the numbers are supposed to be according to law. The good ones put the numbers in places where they cost you less in taxes. But the bad ones just put the numbers wherever QuickBooks tells them to. A CFO, on the other hand, is the one who essentially quantifies the entire business and says, here's the actual operational financial strategy that would make the most sense given your current set of goals. So whenever we step in to work with the customer, the first thing we do is figure out, what do you want to do with the business? What's your whole goal in running this thing? And in a lot of cases, we want to sell, which makes a ton of sense. That's usually one of the first times people really think about their finances in that regard. Realistically, by the time you thought about this, you should have hired a CFO 2 years ago, but we'll do what we can with whatever time you give us. And so if you're looking to sell, then we basically say, all right, if you want to sell in the next 18 months to 3 years, we're going to set a series of goals for you based off what multiplier you want to hit and what your total valuation ought to be. And then we'll backtrack it and say, great, here are the KPI frameworks we need to set up now. Here are the numbers you need to hit for each individual metric. So like dollars per technician, upsell stats, recurring revenue stats, et cetera. Here are all the stats that we know buyers are going to be looking for. We're going to start working you towards those numbers now. And here's the actual benchmarks throughout the entire course of it. And a lot of the guys came from institutional buyers. Like one of the dudes used to be one of the head quarterbacks for Apex for new HVAC deals, which means he knows exactly what their framework is. He wrote some of it. So he can tell them, here's step by step what they're going to want when you go to sell. And then in order to get there, you need to progress at this rate. And we'll build that model up for you. And then we'll track each of the intangible KPIs as it goes. And we've got very, very high success rate on that.
Very interesting. So then do you help businesses that are not wanting to sell but are wanting to scale as well?
Yep. And so amusingly enough, it's almost the exact same framework. And this sounds, I guess, it sounds a little weird first, and then you think about it intuitively. The things that buyers are valuing your business on, why do they care about those things? The things that they're valuing a business on, they're valuing the business on because it makes it so that it's very easy to plug, play, and scale. Anybody that's buying a business is buying a business with the assumption that they can make it bigger and better and get more cash out of it than what they spent for it. Because you're usually spending like a few years worth of profits to buy this business, which means you're hoping that you can increase those profits and compress your ROI fairly significantly. So the variables that people value that business on are the exact set of variables that make it very easy to platform it and then scale safely. Again, if you go through and measure, here's all of the various cost drivers, here's what they correlate to from a revenue perspective, here's where the revenue comes from and which customers to focus on. It just becomes take more money, throw it at the thing that has the highest ROI, receive ROI. So once you've done that, it's very easy to platform and scale. And we have a ton of customers, I think, that start off with the plan of moving towards an exit. And usually within a couple of years, the business is effectively running itself, growing and producing cash. And they no longer feel quite as compelled to sell it, which is great. Sure. Fine. We don't care. That we're happy for you.
Right.
Sounds good. We don't work on commission. So that's wonderful. That's lovely. If you want us to do something else, let us know.
Right. Absolutely. So now you've said that businesses between the $2 to $5 million range for sales become repeatable, while under 2 million can feel chaotic, I guess you could say. What efficiency strategies do you find work best to bring the business up to that less chaotic sales
Sure.
range?
Got it. So let me break apart the earlier sentiment a bit, because I think I said that in a separate interview, which means not everyone may have necessarily heard it. But the gist of it is, and those numbers are a little bit flexible. These are just kind of ballpark heuristics. It's not right at 2 million, your life gets easier. And then it depends wildly based off of your margins. So in a nutshell, businesses go through like 3 or 4 different phases throughout growth. And this is fairly consistent. The numbers vary a bit. But like the 0 to 2 million is always just heroic people doing heroic things heroically. is it's a lot of chaos and just trying to find product market fit and people working long hours and doing just a ton of throwing whatever the appropriate word I can use on an interview is at the wall to try and get something to stick and seeing what happens. Usually by the time you've hit that 2 million point, you have some sort of product market fit. You have something in place that works. Most people don't know what that something is, but something is working because they have scaled up to a fairly high point. The 2 to 5 becomes refining and cutting out all of the stuff that you did to get there that isn't actually valuable. So anyway, the business starts off like a Jackson Pollock painting. You throw a whole bunch of paint at it. Some of it winds up landing where you want it to be. And then we go through and clear out all the stuff that wasn't and make the whole thing much more efficient. So getting to 2 million winds up being a lot of chaotic effort just to build the first structure that the whole business is going to run off of. And then 2 to 5 kind of happens naturally if you do it right, simply by paring away all the surplus expenses and throwing more money at the thing that you've now identified works correctly. In terms of efficiency strategies to get there, it's a version of the same thing we were just talking about, which is if you pay attention very carefully and at a very nuanced level to the results of each thing you're working on, it's much faster to start paring away superfluous expenses and the subpar targets, the customers that aren't really realizing more value than they're costing you to acquire. That said, it's again, somebody you need to have either time or budget to be able to do this or be good with the automation such that you are running everything through a consistent platform. And like if you build out that platform as part of the business at the very beginning, it becomes considerably easier to build everything else within it. Again, thanks to like post AI, this is a much more manageable and achievable goal. There are a lot of businesses that don't lend themselves well to structured data at a small scale, and there are significantly better things that the founder could be doing with their time at that scale than spending hours aggregating data.
So, what has been the most effective ways that you've found to acquire new clients, whether that's for Profitability Partners or for your plumbing business? What are you finding that works the best?
Sure. So how you go about customer acquisition depends heavily on, I guess it's like 1 or 2 major variables, though the two are kind of connected. And it's essentially what is the educational burden for what you're working on? And that is to say, like, does your target audience understand intuitively what you do and understand and associate you with the problem that they have? But realistically, at all times, you're selling a solution to a problem of some sort. Does your target audience understand that they have the problem, and do they understand what the solution is by default, or do you need to teach them that? No one thinks they need a CFO because, again, no one really knows what a CFO does. It just doesn't sound fun. And so most of our target audience has no idea what we do and would not, if I had asked them to list the top 10 things they needed, we would be like number 50. At the same time, they're not doing the things that I just described is possibly the fastest, most cost-efficient way for them to double, triple, quintuple their profits within a 2 to 3 year period. It's just so a huge chunk of what we wind up doing is educational work, which is, again, producing articles, doing interviews like this one, going to conferences and talking to people. I do a ton of work on Reddit, just answering questions for people. It's no marketing, it's no advertising. It's just people posting questions about how their business works and me answering them. And that is our primary form of marketing, I think. But that's because, again, the education burden is super high on that. Whereas for the vet clinic, my dog ate another 9-volt battery. They know exactly who they should call. That I don't have a whole lot of educational work I need to do there most of the time. There's educational work in terms of what other things would make sense or the value of certain treatments. But by and large, our customers find us. Vets are one of the few things that advertise themselves pretty easily. The market's typically undersaturated. And if you ever need marketing, you just take pictures of the puppies in the building currently.
Yeah. That is so true. You have to know what your clients need to know in order to get them to want, to come to you for service.
There's a translation effort between what we do and what they think they want. And so it's figuring out, all right, what is it that you consider your problem to be? Great. Let's pick that apart. Here are the solutions to it. Here's how we would do that for you. And that's the first part in that kit. And then that scenario is just getting people to sit down and talk to you at all. Because we're in record low consumer trust environment. People will get like 100 emails a day offering them everything from a wife in a shipping container to, quintuple your business in 30 seconds with unknown AI. No one trusts anything they get. And as soon as a stranger approaches them to talk about something, they assume I'm trying to sell them something. To be fair, they are correct. I would love to sell them something. That said, I will not be selling them something unless that something happens to solve their problem.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's 100% the point of the business, right? Is to help them and not just
right. And that's a lot of folks
their time and take their money.
Yeah, a lot of folks have lost focus on that. There's a lot of this is a very snake oil heavy industry. There are a ton of people out there saying we could fix it, and because it is very difficult to measure the ROI on exactly what we do within like a 3-month period, you get 3 months of charlatans out there just taking your money before you realize that you've just been wasting it.
Right, right. So, what type of software would you use then to provide these analysis and projections and advice to your clients?
So we wind up very frequently just working within whatever framework they have. So our goal in setting something up for a client is to build a system such that your KPIs come to key performance indicators. For anybody who's not familiar, basically, what are the main numbers that you need to pay attention to that actually tell you how healthy your business is? We want to build a KPI dashboard of some kind that aggregates the leading variables that tell you when something's about to go wrong, the retroactive variables that tell you how, with confidence, how well you're doing, etc., into a single dashboard somewhere. But to do that means we need to use the data that's coming into whatever system you're using currently. And in some cases, there is no system, in which case we have to set them up with the system. And I was actually having a conversation about this the other day. What ERP or like what platform you're using to collect data and manage your company is almost entirely industry specific, especially at smaller scale. So if you're doing a service industry business of some kind, so if you have an HVAC company, a plumbing company, electricians, roofers are killing it right now. Any of those companies, probably ServiceTitan. ServiceTitan is just the go-to for it. I'll get a benefit for if private equity comes to buy you out, you will get a better valuation for being on ServiceTitan specifically. And it is because whatever else is in their portfolio probably is on ServiceTitan. And so if you're already there, it saves them the whole headache of converting you over to being there. And they're eventually going to roll you together with other companies. So whether or not that's the best choice for you, they will probably value you more highly because it will save cost for them. So example, like we work heavily within them, and then we'll work with QuickBooks, and then we'll wind up doing a ton of stuff manually in Excel and then putting it back out there. And then once we've got the framework for the Excel computations done, we'll try and get the whole calculation shifted over to your platform so that you just have an automatic database. So we wind up working in a ton of different platforms. The guys each kind of niche down to specific industries for the most part, and so are very intimately familiar with whichever platforms are prevalent in their industries. Yeah, I don't have like one consistent one. That would be really nice. That'd be
No.
great. We could automate
Yeah.
way more of our work if we weren't working within each person's domain.
Right. No, but it makes sense that you go to where they are and provide the solutions from there. So, yeah.
At the end of the day, we're external contractors. We don't want your business relying on us forever. We don't expect your business to rely on us forever. We build a system for you to run your own business, and then we leave whenever you don't need us anymore.
So, do you provide training then for your clients so that they have somebody in-house that can do it going forward, or how does that work?
Yes, asterisk. So like we will happily train their bookkeeper and their accountant in terms of how to aggregate the data that they need and what formats and like how different transactions ought to be categorized, which numbers are important for a KPI, which numbers are probably noise, et cetera, how to pull things in, find them, put them where they need to be. Like we will happily provide that framework. The part that is somewhat difficult to train, we spend a lot of time chatting with owners, and we'll essentially go through, here's what the numbers are telling us. Here's what we're seeing. This number is weird. Can you tell us what happened this month? And we'll help them a lot with a framework for thinking about it. I don't necessarily know that some of the things that we do are particularly trainable, which is to say like, it's like building that dashboard is one part of it. Learning what to do with the information is a much bigger deal. Your sales for new techs are 3 times as good as the old techs. What happened here? And the answer is that the new guys, while not being particularly good at their job, were way more charismatic and willing to chat with little old ladies. And consequently, they're phenomenal at upsells. Like they just wanted those
Yeah.
guys to come back and chat with them again. And so we figured out what they needed to do after chatting with the owner and figuring out who the different guys were was take one new guy and one old guy and put those two of them in each van. And now each van has 2 techs in it, and one of them gets the work done. The other one hangs out and chats with Karen about her cat and looks at birthday photos, and they leave with like a little bag of cookies and 150% upsell in every single job. And the old guy gets it all done in the same day. And so we basically had every single van wound up being worth 1.5x what it used to be. So for a fleet of 20 vans, wound up being essentially like a 30% increase in margin immediately. It's stuff like that where like your numbers tell you, if as soon as you start tracking very discrete variables, you then need to translate, all right, why are these different and what can I use that information for? And so, well, we'll happily work with you for it. That's a bit tricky to teach people that part.
Yeah, absolutely. So what would you say are I guess one of the challenges that you would like to address with profitability partners, whether that's in the business or for your clients?
It's got to be the education thing. Again, that's what we're describing as far as picking up clients is still our biggest challenge. We work in an environment where there's very low trust and very low understanding, which means it's roughly the equivalent of teaching in a public school. No one wants to listen to you. No one really wants to
Yeah.
talk to you about it at all, actually. But what you're trying to teach them is actually very useful, and you really wish they would listen to you.
Yeah.
Also, occasionally someone throws something. Like, your goal here is very much just getting someone to sit down and talk to you about their problems and like listen to you and trust you enough to like let you answer questions and then make a decision somewhat objectively as to whether or not they think they want to work with you. So yeah, marketing and sales for us still remains very, very challenging despite our reputation. And I don't have a good solution to that just yet, because every single technique that you can come up with for a new marketing or a new like approach strategy to people, AI can replicate in under 5 minutes and then just mass spam it and ruin it. So it very much is just reputation and relationship based for us. We need people to refer us to the people they work with. And that's, I mean, all of our clients almost come from referrals from past clients or brokers that we've worked with who have sold businesses for an extra 2x multiplier in half the time. It's people that have worked with us that are busy serving as our marketing team. I would love to be able to make that scale faster. I genuinely don't think there's a way.
Yeah. What are your short-term goals or long-term goals for Profitability Partners? How do you see technology and AI supporting that vision?
Absolutely. Medium, so short to long term. Short term, I would like to have a better inbound funnel. Again, I would just like to have more referral partners sending people our way, but it takes time. It is slow build. You need to build trust. Longer term, so we have the team is essentially stratified between the accountants and the CFOs, and the accountants for each business have essentially a training platform for where data is pulled from, how it needs to get organized, what we want the outcome, like what we want the sheets to look like. And the CFOs go through and have to review all of that work to make sure it was done correctly, and then translate that over to those actual insight dashboards, and then translate those dashboards into like, here are your key takeaways and actionable items for each month. Now, a lot of the stuff prior to the CFO could realistically probably be automated to a significant degree. Most of the AI platforms, like I keep an eye on a lot of the AI platforms that are working on this right now. They're making progress. They're getting decently close, but it needs to be able to connect to each of the various different programs that we have to work within. It needs to create a queue list or a flag list of everything that it's not sure about. And it needs to have a reasonable framework for appraising what it's not sure about. Eventually, I'm sure an AI platform would be able to do our entire job. The problem very much is you need to be able to teach an AI what does correct look like. Like, you need to be able to give it the feedback of, here is what the right answer looks like. You get a cookie. And the actual insight translation piece where you say, here's what the numbers are. This is what they mean in this particular context, given these other external variables. That's very hard to create a high validity environment around. AI did historically, and actually all of computer programs that I've worked with historically, do not do well with the omission of information. They don't know what information is not being presented to them intuitively. So getting it to at least automate the accounting piece would still save us a ton in terms of budget. And I mean, realistically, even if we have to audit the work anyways, it'd be good. It's not going to set us all that far back, that much further back, provided that it can reach the same level as the current CPAs. And that I think is more achievable. So like, goal medium term would be to do that. And then I would love to scale out and just bring on more partners. We hire pretty much exclusively former private equity buyers. So like, it's entirely people who have a history in the M&A space at one of the bigger firms that was doing the purchasing, which in turn means that we know that they understand the framework they're looking for, how the deal structure is going to work, and can support somebody straight through due diligence and the exit if that comes up. And if it doesn't, they know full well what the company is going to do post-acquisition and why that works, what works in smaller contexts, what doesn't, et cetera. Like, we're a bit finicky about bringing on partners, but it would be nice to bring on more of them, which in turn means having just more clients to support them. There are a ton of people that would love to leave private equity. Some people want to see their family occasionally.
Imagine that, eh?
Wild, I know.
It is hard in all businesses, I hear anyway. For business leaders listening, especially those in accounting, finance, or advisory roles, what's one piece of advice you would give them about building more resilient, de-risked businesses?
Sure. Think of your numbers from a narrative and goal-driven perspective. I feel like a lot of people build spreadsheets and calculate certain numbers because somewhere along the line they were told they had to. And like, they know in the back of their head that they need to do it, but no one really thinks that hard about why you're doing each of these things. So treat your finances from a more narrative perspective. What is your goal for the business in the next 18 months? Let's say you want to double in size. What needs to be true for that to happen? You either need twice as much efficiency out of your current guys, or you need twice as many guys, you need twice as many customers, or you need twice as much out of each customer. Those are more or less a MECE definition of what it would take to double, right? So for each of those variables, how feasible is each one? Can you get twice as much out of your customer? Well, how much are they paying currently? What is the current market rate for the services you provide? Can you provide more services? And you start breaking down into this whole branch structure. And for each of those things, you can pull data and like you can actually perform research to confirm this is the range of things that I could charge my customer for. These are the things they'd be willing to pay. This is what they'd be happy with, et cetera. For each of your guys, how efficiently are they working? How efficiently could they be working? What does their step-by-step process for each job look like? How many of those steps are required? If you were to remove these steps or batch these steps, how much more could they get done? And usually it's not double, but you can get like 20 or 30% more out of the guys, followed by, all right, if I get 20 to 30% more out of the existing guys, then I needed another like 70 to 80% to fill in with new guys. But if each one's worth 1.2 times as much now, what's your onboard process? And like you can basically break apart each of these things. Calculating numbers for your business, any sort of KPI, pick a goal first, figure out which numbers need to be true to achieve that goal, and then start breaking down intermediary steps to get to that. A, it makes the whole process feel a little bit more fun because you're not just calculating stuff for the sake of calculating stuff. You're actually working towards something that you care about. And B, it actually also forces you to calculate KPIs in a meaningful way rather than just having a dashboard that you look at in the morning and either feel good about or bad about for reasons you don't understand.
Yeah.
So think about your numbers from a goal-driven narrative perspective.
Good, solid advice. I appreciate that. For our listeners, where can they connect with you if they'd like to get more information or connect with Profitability Partners?
Sure. So you can get in touch with me directly anytime you like. I am George at Profitability Partners, or .io, not .com. You can also find me on LinkedIn, George Staruch. You're only going to be able to do that if my name's written somewhere in this. My name is actually a Polish derogatory word for old people. Staruch is literally an insulting term for old people in Polish. So that's like back when they were naming families, like you make barrels, therefore you're a cooper, you make bread, you're a baker. Screw those old guys. They're really annoying. And that's my last name, which having met my family, I get it. But yeah, I'm on LinkedIn as well. There aren't a lot of us for unsurprising reasons. The Staruchs were, not shockingly, not a prolific family.
George, thank you so much for
having me.
the grounded and practical conversation here today. This was one of those episodes where the insights apply not just to accountants, but across all industries. So I appreciate you sharing with us. And to our listeners, if today's conversation has sparked ideas around operations, profitability, or how AI can actually support smarter decision-making in your businesses, be sure to like and subscribe and share this episode with someone who's building businesses behind the scenes as well. Until next time, this is Beyond the Margins. Have a great day.